Let's all try to put the pieces back together again.
Hello, this is Dan Nowman Niswander. You are watching The Nowman Show. I am here in MacArthur Park at the Basic Income March 2020, and the date I'm recording this is September 19th, 2020. And this is essentially to raise awareness of the UBI, Universal Basic Income. This is a topic that has been discussed for years, essentially. I mean, it goes back as far as Dr. Martin Luther King and even President Richard Nixon in the 1960s into the 70s. There's many household names from all points of political perspectives, from the left to the right, that have talked about this kind of idea. Essentially, what it is, it's kind of like a dividend. You know, if we're all working, being productive in some way or another, contributing to society, or just existing even in some cases, doing the best we can with the circumstances that we find ourselves in. We're all contributors in one way or another. Why should we share in the commons, the wealth? So this protest or march is also combining, as you can see here, these are little supposed symbols of eviction notices. As benefits from the CARES Act end, such as unemployment, and if there were stimulus checks for people, people's rents were delayed, but not necessarily forgiven or canceled. They were just delayed. So there will be a point where money that was postponed because of the COVID-19 quarantine, it will still be due, and in some cases with interest due on top of that. Could be a disaster of more evictions, more seizure of properties like we saw with 2008 and 2009 downturn. So these are little eviction notices here on the grounds. Now, and to go in more detail about the Universal Basic Income, you can see an episode that I did on the Nowman Show, combining different content that I'd had on the show from 2015 through 2019, including panel discussion with Matt Orfala that did a great video about it a few years back, and also an expert coming from the perspective of the historical UBI that has been successful in the early part of the AD, if you will, after BC, in the time following Prophet Muhammad in the Middle East. All the way up through, well, right now we haven't talked about it yet, but there is a pilot program implemented in Germany, I believe, until 2021. So, and it has been proven to pull millions of people out of poverty for the time period that it is implemented. And again, pilot programs and implementation are not the same thing. There's a lot of things to discuss about it, but it's essentially helping people get cash when there are no other alternatives. There aren't jobs, or their cost of living goes up, or they get evicted. There still needs to be solutions for people. And the CARES Act gave basically trillions of dollars to so-called essential businesses, but we saw so far from what we have seen when people have given money back, it looks like, even though it wasn't very transparent, a lot of that money given was to people that running businesses that personally have mega millions or even billions, but they just get this free money that they can maybe turn into loans. If it's a financial institution, they'll get that money back. We already saw in 2008, 2009, the too big to fail banks got even bigger once that so-called crisis came to an end. A lot of people lost their homes in foreclosures. A lot of people lost their retirement savings. And to this day, where's the bailout for them? 2020 now. Still waiting on their bailout, right? So it's not been an equitable situation in how to deal with the crises, including what went on recently with the CARES Act in March of 2020. which could have been up to $10 trillion. We don't even really know. It's not transparent. It was passed by 100% of Congress at a time when most people were trying to figure out what to do with the quarantine when that was announced. So it kind of was a distraction to many of us. We were more focused on that than trying to figure out what's really in this bill. And it really should have been delayed. So in my view, even the progressives dropped the ball there. They should have said, let's put this on a delay till at least the people can, get transitioned into whatever it is, in at least a couple of weeks, and just so we can examine what's in this bill and who's going to get this money. Of course, that didn't happen. So it's a big crisis. I do in this episode, in this discussion, want to focus on the universal basic income as one of the solutions, but there's also Medicare For All, which, at a time of a pandemic, why can't we get everyone health care? Of course, the economic crisis, which the UBI would help deal with. I think we also could talk about worker cooperatives. We all, contribute to the commons. We all should benefit from the wealth that is created in the richest country in the history of humankind, as far as we know. There are solutions, and what are we doing? As we go forward, we'll cover the day's events, and we'll see what unfolds in the March for Basic Income 2020.
Making this universal basic income unconditional with no strings attached, no means tested. These antiquated systems that we're using today have got to go, guys. We need to upgrade our technology. We need to upgrade our ability to help our people. We need to reinvent what it means to help our fellow humans fulfill their dreams. And I want you all to remember this moment. Remember what it's like to stand here at the beginning. To stand here at the beginning of a movement. You guys are all a part of this. Despite the darkness we find ourselves ill-equipped to navigate right now, remember what it means to be here. We have made so many leaps and bounds this year. Basic income has gone from darkness to being a household term. Basic income is now desired by 75% of Americans. People want financial stability. People want their families to thrive. People want to be able to have the bandwidth to go after their dreams and achieve them with vigor and purpose. To have the agency to find the paths that fill their soul. You deserve that, I deserve that, and that's what we're fighting for here today. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you for fighting for economic justice. It's time to get out there and thrive, baby. I want to now present Larry Cohen. Amazing, amazing man. He's helped make this event possible, and he's going to tell you a little bit about himself and an amazing UBI advocate here today to give us some words of wisdom from him, Larry Cohen.
Kimberly. Thank you, Kimberly. This? Yeah. Thank you, Kimberly. Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming out and being here on this wonderful, clear day for once. My name is Larry Cohen. I'm from Build the Floor. I have been advocating for universal basic income for about 6 years now, and it's been amazing to see how many of you I don't know. Because that is a sign that we're making progress. Every time we have an event, we bring people together, there are new faces. And there are more names, and each one of you has a name and a story and an understanding why universal basic income would change your life, your family's life, your community's life. So thank you all for coming out today. I want to mark this occasion by noting, as I'm Jewish, this is the beginning of Rosh Hashanah, the new year. Everybody. And I want to call out the fact that in the Jewish religion, Rosh Hashanah is a time for reflection, because it is a moment in time where you start seeing the new year take place, the end of the past and the beginning of the next new year. It's an interesting time to have that moment and to have that reflection that I'm having here with you today. This year has had a lot of pain. This year has been very painful for many of us. Those that we know, those who we don't know. anything we've seen on social media, anything from our families to our communities, it has been painful, and we need to admit that. Because only by acknowledging the pain will we be pushing for the potential of change. Only by knowing what we have gone through as a community and as a country will we be inspired to take action to make things different. UBI is about changing the way we can run our society. That's right. Basic income provides security, dignity, and freedom to each and every recipient. With the pandemic now in its 6th, 7th month, basically it's 10,000th year in my head, it seems like it's never going to end. But if there is one silver lining that we can find as we struggle together to get through this time, it's to recognize that change can happen. But change only happens when we make it happen. Yeah. Change is not going to come from a Marvel superhero. Right. Change is not going to happen when we're going to look to leaders who acknowledge that they're hearing our concerns. No, change is going to happen from us. Yes. Change is going to happen starting today. Yes. Change is going to happen, and that's what it will take to be able to bring that change to Washington, to our local communities, and to drive the change so that next year, this time, we will be able to look back and say, what a year, what a year makes, what a difference a year makes, when we have fought so hard to demonstrate why every one of us should have basic economic security, why we pushed so hard, why we made our leaders listen, and why we passed UBI into law by this time next year. Yeah. Speaking of pushing UBI into law, I'd like to introduce somebody who is fighting to do just that, David Kim. David Kim is fighting for the representation here in this neighborhood in Koreatown. And David has been on the front lines pushing for UBI. And I will let him tell us more about his work, what he's trying to bring to here in LA, and what we can do to help support him and the basic income movement. That's right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you so much. All right, thank you so much for everyone coming today. Before we go ahead and proceed, I just wanted to, as all of you guys know, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away yesterday, and I just would love to, if you don't have to participate if you don't want to, I totally understand. But let's just take 5 seconds of silence for those who do want to. All right, thank you so much, everyone. We'll continue to mourn for her, but remember where all of that energy needs to go. It needs to go in bringing change to our communities, bringing change to our government, bringing change within our own families and communities, because that's how it all begins. So, for those of you guys who don't know, my name is David Kim. I'm running for U.S. House of Representatives in California's 34th District. But as you all know, politics is not my career. I'm a labor and immigration attorney. I help empower people to fight against a broken and unequal system. Because I know all too well, can I have somebody help me hold this? Thank you. Because I know all too well what it feels like to be overwhelmed and to be powerless. I graduated from law school with over $200,000 in law school student debt. I still have them. For years as an attorney, I worked free as an attorney during the day, and I drove for Lyft and Uber at night until 4 in the morning. So I know all too well what it's like to work multiple jobs, what it's like to have 2 to 3 jobs to make ends meet. I know what it is to live in someone's home and to ask for something simple and to wish for something simple just to have a room of your own. To fear a health emergency because I couldn't pay or afford an ambulance or a hospital when I was sleeping in cars at times. I was hoping for no surprises tomorrow, but then I had no love for today. So when we look at all of that, UBI, what we're standing here for today, it's not just a concept. It's something so personal to each and every one of us, to all of our families, to all of our communities.
That's right.
I'm an immigration and employment rights attorney, and I meet client after client who tell me about their situation, about being forced to work into exploitative conditions because they have no other choice. They have no bargaining power because they have no financial safety net. And so in a rich country like ours, where does the money go? When was the last time that you guys felt like you were living in a country dripping in money? Or a better question, when do you feel, was there ever a time that you felt like the country was working for you, that your government was working for you?
No.
No. In our district, the average person makes $300 less than the average rent for a one-bedroom apartment. We're not talking about groceries. We're not talking about electricity. We're just saying the average income is not enough for the freaking average rent. I've met families in our district, in my apartment building. They work multiple jobs, work so many hours to put food on the table, to take care of their children, to the point where they can't see their children at the same time. Is that normal?
No.
We give, and we give. But the country, the government does nothing for us. It's time for them to do something for us.
Yes. They've become lazy.
Now, to turn to a more positive note, imagine this for a second. Imagine in a world of UBI, we have a multi-generational family, 2 children, 2 parents, a grandparent. The year starts well. With their $3,000 total UBI a month, they begin to save funds for their children's college education. But then a few months later, one of the parents get a heart attack. So then they have to put a pause in the children's college funds. But at least they're able to pay money for the ambulance, for the hospital. They might even have money to pay for grandma's medical expenses and even a home health aid. So this family is actually safe and secure and most importantly healthy. And that's just one family. A UBI could feed 12 million children living in poverty in this country. A UBI could house over 600,000 brothers and sisters living unhoused in our country, including the 7,000 living in Skid Row in our district, including the tens of thousands living in our district. A UBI could empower our children to pursue their dreams and not drown in debt. And the list goes on. We deserve a floor to stand on and not spend all of our lives trying to prove that we need it. We live in the countries, in the world's greatest and wealthiest country, and it doesn't make sense that the people are left with nothing. And so we can actually fix this, guys. We have the power to fix this with one quick flight to DC. In Congress, we can change the system. We can change the system. We can empower the people with a UBI to say no to stolen wages, to say no to horrible working conditions, to say no to food and housing insecurity, to say no to crushing debt. We can do it. We deserve and demand a floor to stand on, demand a basic income, demand more empathy and no more excuses. Our leaders tell us that, hey, we have to make a choice between the people and the economy. But we're the economy. We are the economy. When you're putting humanity first, you're putting the economy first, which is us. Our businesses thrive when we have the purchasing power. Our workers thrive when they have a financial safety net. Our families thrive when we can afford basic necessities. So what's going on? What's happening? For far too long, our government has tried to solve inequality with a patchwork of small solutions. And we're sick and tired of it. We're sick and tired of these nothing-solving fixes. We want change. We want real change that makes a difference. And so that's why all of you guys are here. That's why we're here, standing here today. And we're going to continue this march, just like how Larry said he's been doing it for 6 years. We're going to continue on. I mean, I'm going to get into office and make that shorter. But we're going to continue on until we get the UBI that we need, with a better future ahead of us. because that's why we are the economy and we are the people and we matter. So it's time to step up and to use the voice that we have. So thank you so much for showing up, every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for being here today. Thank you everyone for fighting for economic justice. Continue to do so. Continue to outreach to your communities, your friends, your family, the people you know, the people you don't know. We got to keep spreading the word. We got to keep bringing the vote to the House, to the Senate, and get the right people in the places that can make a difference. Thank you, Income Movement. Thank you, Steady. Thank you, Fund for Humanity, for helping us out and funding this all today. We appreciate you more than you know. And thank you all, you guys. You guys are what really makes this happen. You guys are the movement. Be proud, be loud, and do this again next year and every day in between. Continue to fight for economic justice. One check is not enough. Our system is, I'm just going to keep reading. Our system is broken. We are the economy. And I like this one. It is time to thrive. Yeah.
Basic income is a solution. And for those of you who may not understand, we need to have this economic conversation. So much is focused on electoral politics, so much is focused on social and racial injustice, which is important and should be addressed. But let's not forget the economic injustice conversation and what has happened economically, even actually since 2008, when there was an economic downturn, a stock market crash of sorts. There was a bailout of the banks. We heard about all of that. The too big to fail banks, trillions of dollars went to what we would now call essential businesses, right? And it did keep the economy, I guess, from collapsing, you could say. But the big banks just got bigger. And the same kind of thing would probably happen now that we have a pandemic creating yet another economic crisis. Millions of people did not recover from the 2008-2009. That's why the hope and change of Obama, it fell flat. It didn't work. Even from a political, electoral perspective, there were over 1,000 seats of, from Congress to state to local across the country that went Republican because all that hope and change just didn't happen. And there wasn't even talk of a New Deal or different plans to how to help the 99%. That's how we got Occupy Wall Street, essentially, not actually addressing the needs of the vast majority of people that were impacted by that crisis. Now here we are with a pandemic, that in itself a public health and safety crisis. We've crossed another landmark. Was it 1 million deaths now? We can't get everybody health care, right? And Biden is running for president, and he's not an advocate for Medicare For All, and can't even start with that conversation. Well, how do we get everybody covered? Instead, we need to get more people covered and make sure we don't, millions don't lose their coverage. Well, how about just starting with the premise of getting everybody covered? That hasn't happened. Basic income would be a way to address the income needs of millions of people. There were tens of millions of people that lost their jobs when the quarantine was announced because of the pandemic. And the CARES Act in March of 2020 was passed by 100% of Congress, gave trillions of dollars, again, to essential businesses. We heard about that. Well, a lot of that really was the mega millionaires and billionaires who own these so-called essential businesses, supposedly essential to keep the economy going so it doesn't collapse. But as what's been happening, people that already have money, they can invest in the stock market. They just, they wait for the stock prices to go down. They buy low, they sell high, that usual kind of thing. The average American doesn't participate in any of that. So where does most of that trillions of dollars go? Well, does it go in investing in businesses? Does it really help the masses, the mass of people that are in economic dire straits more and more as the months go by? And I can see out and about, just doing that more and more in my own city, in Los Angeles area here. Things are the economy's collapsing. The economy's dropping. It's not increasing. We're not addressing these issues. Basic income would be a way to give people some income, which they would put back into the system. And many people say, well, how are we going to get the money? And I would just say, the CARES Act, the bailout of the banks 2008, 2009, the CARES Act in 2020, trillions of dollars to basically to many mega millionaires and billionaires with businesses. That money was available. The money for 9 wars, is it, worldwide since starting in 2003. There's plenty of billions of dollars for that every year, hundreds of billions actually. So to say, where do we get the money for Medicare? Where do we get the money for basic income to help the 99%? There's your answer. No discussion about that. Even in the 2020 electoral process, it's not front and center. The economy, how to help the masses of people that are obviously struggling. It's just insane. Here's a poll I've already talked about the Medicare For All polls, and vast majority of people, 69%. There's polls up to 69% of the general public, regardless of your political leaning, that favor a Medicare For All system. Not expanding Obamacare, not going backwards either, but actual Medicare For All, just starting with the premise of getting everybody covered with the Medicare system. That's the vast majority of the population. But we don't get it. Say the minority that runs the country. That's the reality of it, folks. As far as basic income, 77% of Democrats and 52% of Republicans now support an emergency universal basic income of $2,000 a month in response to the COVID crisis. That comes from the appeal. The monthly Economic Crisis Support Act is a piece of stimulus legislation proposed by Vice Presidential nominee Kamala Harris and Senator Bernie Sanders and Ed Markey, and would provide $2,000 a month to people throughout the pandemic. Well, that's a start. And you would think that the Democratic Party, especially with Biden and having Kamala Harris as his running mate, they would talk about that as a way to encourage people to want to vote for them. But, calling this stuff far radical socialism is just ridiculous. That's not what it is. These are solutions. They're needed to address the economic crisis that's facing the 99%. I mean, because of not addressing these issues, that's how we got Occupy Wall Street. I do want to briefly talk about the Green New Deal. That is involving various solutions as well going forward, including Medicare for All, including a form of basic income that Richard Nixon talked about, actually. The Republican president, but I won't get into the details of that. A lot of it does have to do with the science and the transition of the economy, of course, going forward, because of the scientific data that we have regarding the pollution, the acidification of the oceans, the melting ice, the rising overall global temperature of the Earth. Obviously, that is going to require getting to zero emissions of fossil fuels, because not just the driving of vehicles, but there's methane. There's also other greenhouse gas impacts, right, that we have to address, and that is going to require transitioning the whole economy, the infrastructure. Whether you're talking about transportation, whether you're talking about industrialization, whether you're talking about agriculture, we still have to address the essential basic needs of billions of people in the process. So that's why we have to consider the Green New Deal in all of this as well. It's essential. So what is going to be next? It's going to be up to the people to decide what is going to be done, because obviously that's all there is that's remaining. So this is some food for thought. This is Dan Nowman Niswander for the Nowman Show. Stay present in the moment always.
Let's all try to put the